Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a very exciting video. Sorry if you can hear Loki eating in the background. A couple months ago, I did a video called Reading the Highest Rated Romances on my TBR, and I really loved making that video. I planned to make it a whole series where I choose different genres and read the highest rated books on my TBR in those genres. I recently started doing a fantasy one, and then if you've watched my past couple of videos, you would know that in July, I hit a really big reading slump, and I was just struggling with fantasy, so I decided to put that video on hold. I will be doing it in the future and doing more genres in this series, but today we're just gonna do romance again, because you can never go wrong with romance. So I have 3 books chosen here that are all on my TBR and highly rated. Basically, the way that I judge if something is highly rated is if it has over 1,000 ratings and above a 4 average star rating. The books that I will be reading in this video is That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert. This has a 4.10 average rating. Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. This has a 4.05 average rating. And then One to Watch by Kate Stayman London. This also has a 4.10 average rating. So definitely these 3 are more so on the lower end of a 4 average rating, but they still count within the rules of this video, although I made up the rules, so doesn't even matter. But yeah, I'm very excited to read all 3 of these. You would have seen them on my August TBR, and I was a little bit sneaky when choosing those TBR books in that I was looking up what the average ratings were, and I was trying to pick books that fit within my TBR challenges that also could count for a highest rated video. So yeah, over the next couple of days, I will be reading these 3 books and sharing with you my thoughts on them and whether or not I think that they deserve, and I use that term deserve very lightly because that's subjective, but whether I think they deserve their high rating. The first book I'm going to start is That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert. This is the 3rd book in her Ravenswood series. I read the first book in the series and I loved it. I haven't read the second one yet, so I'm definitely going to need to do that, but I got a copy of the 3rd book, so I'm kind of skipping around. But I think it's fine. I'm pretty sure you can read these out of order. This is an age gap romance with an older woman and a younger man, and I believe that they are friends, and she is attending all these events that her ex-husband is going to be at with his new wife. So she doesn't want to go to all these events alone, so she asks her friend to go with her and pretend to be her boyfriend. So it's got a lot of tropes that I like. It's got age gap, friends to lovers, fake dating, and it's by Talia Hibbert, who is probably in my top 3 favorite romance authors, so I have very high hopes for this one. So I'm just about 50 pages into That Kind of Guy, and I'm really enjoying this. So I mentioned what the plot is, but basically the main character, Ray, is an author. She used to write books with her husband, but he ended up cheating on her and getting the woman he was having an affair with pregnant, so they got a divorce and he married that woman and they had a kid. And now there is this big like award ceremony for authors that she has to attend, and she just does not want to go alone. So she asks her friend Zach, who was actually in the first book. He was a side character in the first book, and I believe that his brother is the hero in the second book. She asks him to go with her, and they both have a really big like attraction to each other, but they never act on it for various reasons. Basically, Zach is demisexual, but he hasn't come out to anybody. In case you don't know, demisexual is when you only feel attraction to people once you have developed an emotional connection to them. So Zach in his past would hook up with a lot of people just randomly because he hadn't really come to terms with his sexuality and was like trying to be different. So he has a reputation in this town of being like a player. And Ray, because she went through this horrible marriage and divorce, she isn't able to develop emotional connections with people. She just wants a physical connection. So they're kind of like almost opposites. Like, he needs an emotional connection, and she is avoiding emotional connections and only wants a sexual one. So they have a lot of obstacles. And basically, at the start of the book, she kind of propositions him, and he like gets really upset about it and turns her down and like embarrasses her, and then ends up apologizing and like explaining, and he comes out to her. So she's the first person that he's ever told that he's demi, and that really like brings them closer together. And then he agrees to attend these events with her and pretend to be her boyfriend. So that's where I'm at so far, and I'm really enjoying it. Also, Ray has a chronic illness. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I'm sure that will be explained at some point. But love chronic illness rep. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying this. I always enjoy Talia Hibbert's books. And it's funny because I'm also listening to this on audio, and I always forget that all of Talia Hibbert's books take place in the UK because she is British. So it's funny because like when I'm physically reading it, I am hearing it in an American accent, and I picture all the characters as being American. Or like I just assume that they're American, and then I switch to the audiobook and it's all British accents. And I'm like, oh, right. This is in the UK. I haven't read much more, but I wanted to update with the fact that we have been blessed with the only one bed trope. Literally any romance book that has the only one bed trope automatically is better. That's just facts. You can't argue it. So right now they just like checked into the hotel where the award ceremony is at. She made the reservation at the hotel way before she knew Zach was gonna go with her. So she only got a room with one bed, and then she forgot to change the reservation, and the hotel is totally booked up. So they have to share one bed. So I did want to mention that I am really loving the fact that Ray is older. She is in her 40s, and I just love seeing older heroines in romance books because I feel like that doesn't happen often. I feel like with the majority of romance books, the heroine is in their 20s or early 30s. So it's nice to see an older heroine. Also, something that I didn't mention was she has a scar, like a really bad scar on her face from an accident that she was in that I believe was caused by her chronic illness. And because of that, she's a little bit insecure, especially because now going to this award ceremony, a lot of her colleagues and like people, her peers and stuff that she knows haven't seen her since before she got her scar, so she's very like nervous about it and how people are gonna respond to it. And I just really like her. She's a very strong person, and I really love Zach. He is so sweet. He really reminds me of another hero that Talia Hibbert wrote. I forget what his name was, but it was the guy from Guarding Temptation, because they're both like very like strong and tough, but also very, very sweet and soft and protective without being like alpha males, you know? And I really like that. I feel like that is something that Talia Hibbert does really well, is that she writes guys who are very masculine, but also very soft and kind and not like overly aggressive. I just finished That Kind of Guy, and I loved this so much. I'm going back and forth on what I want to rate it. I think I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Like I mentioned already throughout this video, I loved both of the main characters so much, and how each of them was kind of struggling with different things. Ray was struggling with opening herself back up to love and to emotional connections, and Zach was really struggling with his sexuality and being comfortable with it and open with it. And I really loved seeing both of them kind of lean on each other and support one another. And their romance was just so sweet, and I loved it a lot. Also just really like this Ravenswood group. So the three couples from each of the three books are friends, and a lot of them are related, and I just really liked seeing them all together. Obviously, I still need to read the second book, but I loved seeing, crap, what are their names? Evan and I can't remember her name, but the couple from the first book, I loved seeing them together. I'm pretty sure that the second book, the heroine is the sister of the girl from the first book, and then the hero is Zach's brother. And I believe that it is the nanny trope. I'm pretty sure that he has kids and she is gonna take care of his kids. I could be totally wrong, but I'm very excited to read that. And yeah, I love this so much. I don't think I've ever read a Talia Hibbert book that I didn't give at least 4 stars, and most of them are 5 stars. She's just like, she can't do wrong in my eyes. So the next book I will be reading is Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. I have been meaning to read this book for years. Let's see, when did this come out? This came out in 2016, and I remember seeing everybody reading it back then, but for some reason I never did. And recently the first book in a spin-off series came out, so it kind of like made me interested in the series again. Basically, this is a royalty romance following a prince who is next in line for the throne, but he has to get married first to like somebody of nobility. But he ends up meeting this waitress and falling in love with her. So it's kind of like a Prince and Me type of situation, except for I think that she always knows who he is. Like there's no secret of him pretending to be somebody. So I'm very excited for this. I was like scrolling through the Goodreads. So many of my friends have already read this, so I'm very late to this series, but it's finally happening. Okay. I meant to update more as I was reading this book, but then I ended up reading it in one sitting. So yeah, I just finished this. I am giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I was anticipating. Like, I kind of thought that I would enjoy it, but there would be more like a 3-star book. I really enjoyed this, and I kind of want to like scrap the whole rest of this video and just read the rest of this series because it was so addictive. Like I said, I read it in one sitting. I could not put it down. I mean, granted, it's not very long. It's 301 pages. So yeah, I really loved this. It's about a prince who's next in line for the throne, and he is supposed to get married to somebody soon. So he decides to go and kind of like have a last hurrah in New York. And while he's there, he meets this woman who works in a cafe, and they end up having a romance and falling in love. And she goes back to his country with him, and they kind of come up with this deal to have a like whirlwind romance together until he has to get married. I really loved this. I also loved the side characters in this, who are all going to get their own romances, so I'm very excited for that. And there were 2 bodyguards. He had 2 bodyguards in this book who I believe get their own romances, which I'm excited for because I love the bodyguard trope. This was great. I wish I had more to say about it, but like I just read it so quickly and it was just so addictive. So far, this video is going great. Whenever I do these, I always want one book that I'm gonna disagree on or not like, but it doesn't seem like that is gonna happen. So before I get into the next book, I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey, with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. And it is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. If you've been watching my videos, you probably heard me talk about Skillshare before. Oh, Loki! Do you want to hear about Skillshare? But I have taken several classes on Skillshare at this point, and they've all been so great. One in particular that I recently found was a class by Daniel Jose Older, who is a YA author, and he has a class called Storytelling 101. And in this class, he does a deep dive into the fundamentals of narrative storytelling, and he explores the 4 C's of storytelling, which are character, conflict, context, and craft. I really loved this class. I've actually seen a couple panels that Daniel Jose Older was on, and he's just a really great speaker. I have loved hearing him speak every time that I have. So when I found this class that he did, I was very excited. So I will have a link in the description for the first 1,000 people who click on that link will get a free 2-month trial to the premium membership of Skillshare. So the final book that I will be reading for this vlog is One to Watch by Kate Stamen London. This book sounds so good. Basically, it follows this woman who is a plus-size fashion blogger, and there is a reality television show that is basically The Bachelor, except In this book, it's called Main Squeeze. She one day decides to make a ranting blog post about the lack of diversity on the show, how it's like always skinny, attractive, athletic white people. And her blog post gets a lot of attention, and the show is like having, their ratings are going down, so they decide to make this woman the next Bachelorette, or main squeeze, I guess is what they call it. So she becomes the first plus size main squeeze on the show. And the whole book is like going through her season of the show. And I am very excited for this because I love The Bachelor. It's like, I hate the term guilty pleasure, because if you enjoy something, why be guilty about it? But I feel like The Bachelor is one of those things that like, I'm a little guilty about it. Just a little. But I've seen every season of like every show, all their spin-off shows, everything. I've seen it all. And it's like a train wreck, you know? Like, I watch it for the drama. So I'm really excited for this. I hope that there is a lot of drama. Also, a lot of my friends have been rating this 5 stars recently, so I don't want to set my expectations up too much, but I am very excited. So I'm about 50, let's see, where am I? I'm about 50 pages into this book, and so far I'm really enjoying it. So basically, like I mentioned, the main character B is a plus size fashion blogger. At the start of this book, she is kind of going through a rough time. She has been in love with her best friend, or one of her like closest guy friends, for a long time, and they've always had like chemistry and flirty interactions, but he never really acted on it, and she at the time thought that he was out of her league, so she also never acted on it. And I think they kissed one night, and he ended up right after that like moving across the country for a job, and then he got engaged to somebody. And at the start of this book, he comes to visit her, and he's still engaged to this woman. They're about to get married, and while he's visiting B, they end up hooking up. And the next morning, he disappears and he's completely gone, and she tries to reach out to him, and he completely like ghosted her. So she's like really heartbroken and going through like a lot of emotions, because obviously like she feels guilty for cheating on his fiance because he's engaged, and she also feels heartbroken because she is in love with him and feels like he used her and rejected her, or like he was embarrassed of her because she is plus size. So she's going through it. She's having a bad time, and this show, Main Squeeze, is on, and she's just like really in her feels about being plus size and how nobody on the show looks like her. So she rants in this blog post about it, and the show decides to cast her as the next main squeeze, and she's kind of like apprehensive about it at first, but they tell her how it's going to be like a really great career opportunity for her. She's going to get a lot of exposure, and it's going to open a lot of doors for her, and it'll be really great for young girls to see a plus size lead on the show. So she decides to do it, and basically that's where I'm at right now. She's like signing all the contracts, and they're like telling her how it's all gonna work. And what's really cool is that this book, I didn't know going into this, but the book is told in like mixed media. So like most of it is normal prose, but then every once in a while there's like emails or text messages or website articles or tweets, interviews, stuff like that. So that's really cool, and I am enjoying that a lot. And what I have coming up next, it says that it is episode 1. So I guess the rest of the book kind of goes through all the episodes of the show. At the point in this book that I'm at, we've met all of the guys, all the contestants on the show, and B has gone on a couple dates that have been kind of disastrous. So first, it's really funny because like since I've seen almost every single season of The Bachelor, I kind of know like they always have, I don't want to say they have like the same types of people, but there's like specific character types that they always cast on the show. There's always a villain, there's always somebody there who like has a secret girlfriend, there's always somebody there who is just in it for the fame, there's always somebody who's like really young and immature. Like there's different character archetypes, I guess, that they always fill. So it's really interesting to see who is filling those spots out of these guys. There's definitely a few of them that I really like, but I'm kind of like suspicious because I don't want to be played for a fool, okay? I don't want to be over here standing one of these guys and then it turns out he has like a girlfriend and kids back home that he's hiding. And then there's some that are just like outright horrible already. It's also really interesting because the book shows a lot of the behind the scenes, so it really is reminding me of a mixture of The Bachelor, obviously, and then that show Unreal, which was basically about the behind the scenes of The Bachelor. It was like a drama show following the producers of a Bachelor type show and how they like pull strings and manipulate and create drama and situations and kind of like deceive the people on the show just to create certain narratives. So it's really interesting to get like both parts, like you're getting the actual like episodes, but then also seeing what goes on behind the scenes. And I'm really trying hard not to like flip to the end of the book and see what guy she ends up with, or if she even ends up with a guy, because normally when I watch The Bachelor, there's always spoilers, and like usually the person who wins at the end, like that gets spoiled very early on, and I always look up spoilers because I just hate not knowing. So I'm trying so hard not to do that. So it's been a couple days, but I finally finished One to Watch and I loved this. I think I'm gonna give it 5 stars, and that's not to say that I didn't have some problems with it, which I will talk about in a second, but I just enjoyed it so much. It was just like so entertaining. I cried a couple times, which isn't anything surprising because I cry in almost every book that I read, but I cried more than normal, which means the book really affected me and I really loved it. So firstly, I really liked B. I think that she's the type of character who not everybody is going to like. She's kind of difficult and struggling a lot. Sometimes it's very frustrating to read her like inner monologue about herself and how she is perceiving situations or handling situations, but it felt very real to me. That leads me to one thing that I want to mention, because I was looking up reviews for this, and a lot of the like 1-star reviews mentioned that they didn't like B because she wasn't confident with herself and her body. And while that's very valid, I want to make a point to let you guys know that obviously like this book, the biggest part of the book is plus size representation, but this is not plus size representation of somebody who is 100% confident and secure with their body. This is somebody who is struggling to love themselves, struggling to undo a lot of the internalized fat phobia that has been instilled into her. So if you're looking for a book with a plus size main character who is already there, who is already like confident and loves herself, that's not what this book is, because the journey that B goes through is to get to that place. So I personally really liked that. I also just loved the plot. The plot was definitely the strongest and best part. I loved seeing her go on all of these dates and do the show. I won't spoil at all like how it ends or like which of the guys are the front runners, but there was a couple that I really liked, but there was only one that I was like ride or die for, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything. I had a favorite, but yeah, I really liked the romance, although I will say that this book I feel like leans more into the, I hate the term women's fiction. Every time I have to say it in a video, it doesn't want to come out of my mouth, but it leans more women's fiction contemporary than it does romance. But there is still a lot of romance. Like, it's still a romance, but I think that the main storyline of the book is B's personal inner development rather than a romantic development. And I also mentioned how it was mixed media. I really loved that. I loved seeing like live tweets while the show was on and blog posts and stuff like that, comments, because I felt like it really made this whole world of the show feel more real. Because for anyone who watches The Bachelor, or at least for myself, the most fun part is the fandom and like interacting with the viewers and like live tweeting about the show, or like seeing funny memes that people post about the show. It's honestly the best part. I like that the author was able to kind of incorporate that a little bit. My main negative, which I went back and forth on whether or not this would cause me to lower my rating, and I ultimately decided that it didn't because it didn't deter from my personal enjoyment of the book, but I did want to mention it because I honestly didn't see a lot of reviews that talked about this. The biggest part about this book, like this whole book, is about diversity in a show that typically doesn't have diversity. So B is very vocal about the fact that she wanted guys on the show who were diverse, who were racially diverse, who had diverse body types, who were just not like the standard blonde, white football player. And this book really explored a lot of different diversity. Obviously, plus size. It had a lot of conversations about gender identity because there was a side character who was gender non-conforming. There was a character who came out as asexual, so there was a lot of conversation about that. There was a lot of conversation about body diversity, gender diversity, sexuality, but nothing about race. Not a thing about race. Hello? Still waiting, not a conversation about race, which was very frustrating, especially considering two more prominent characters in the book. One of them was an Asian man and the other one was a black man. And the only time their race was ever mentioned, ever brought up, was at the very beginning when they were being introduced. And that was in a sequence where you're meeting 25 guys. So it's kind of like all these guys are being thrown at you. It's like, this is the French guy, this guy's black, this guy's Asian, this guy has red hair, this guy, like, you can't really place who is who. So at a certain point, I'm like reading about these characters and I'm like, wait a minute, this was the black guy. I'm not saying that like the author had to keep reminding us like, this guy's black, or like every scene that this guy was in to be like, oh, his chocolate skin. But to never have race come up in conversation, especially when this is all surrounding a show that is predominantly white, to never have that be a conversation that you have a black man on the show and an Asian man on the show, just felt lacking. And I think it was especially highlighted because of the fact that the book was having all these other conversations about diversity on the show, but never about race. Race was almost always excluded from that conversation. And I don't know if this is because the author is white. I'm not gonna assume that she's white. I can't really tell. So I don't know if it was maybe she felt uncomfortable talking about race, but to completely eliminate it from the conversation, it was disappointing. Like I said, I'm even struggling now as I'm talking about it because I'm like, how can I still be giving it 5 stars? But I still really loved this book and enjoyed it so much. It still, to me, is a 5-star book. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect book, and I wanted to let you guys know that just so you don't go into it thinking you're gonna get all this amazing, like, well-rounded conversation on diversity, because it's kind of a narrow conversation. So yeah, that is my thoughts on One to Watch. I would actually be really excited for a sequel because, like, there's so many spin-off type of shows that they could do following some of the characters in this book. I would love to see a spin-off or a sequel or something because it was just a lot of fun. Since this video was me reading highly rated books, I kind of want to assess whether I think all of these books deserve their high ratings, although ratings are entirely subjective and it really doesn't matter. But That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert definitely deserves its high rating. It was incredible. Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. I think I really loved this book, but I think that this was the book I was the most surprised to see had such a high rating, because this kind of, to me, feels like one of those books that people would really like, but still rate low. I really enjoyed it. So yes, I think it deserves a rating, but I was surprised at how high it was. And then lastly, One to Watch. I definitely think that this deserves its high rating. This was my favorite out of the 3. Again, like I mentioned, I feel like this is the type of book that not everybody is going to love because B is definitely one of those main characters that, like, she's kind of difficult to read sometimes, but I still really loved her. So yeah, once again, I have done a reading highest rated romances video and I ended up loving all of the books. Will I ever do one of these and not like one of the books? I don't know. Am I too easy to please? I don't know. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys liked this video and I will see you in my next one. Bye!